Pianist Lura Johnson presents an in-depth exploration of the Prelude and Fugue forms through the unique curation of two mammoth keyboard masterworks. We have the Well-Tempered Clavier, Books 1 and 2 of Johann Sebastian Bach, and the 24 Preludes and Fugues by Dmitri Shostakovich. We're talking 144 tracks here, so it is, needless to say, it is a marathon. Thank you, Laura, for spending a few minutes with us for Classical Conversations.
I'm so excited about the launch and happy to be here to talk with you about it.
Yeah. Okay, 144 tracks, as I mentioned, adding up to 7 hours, over 7 hours of music. How do you even prepare for something like that?
Well, it's been 8 years. So yeah, the genesis of the project was in 2017. I was with a student in a lesson and the idea kind of flashed through my brain. I'm not sure exactly what the conversation was, but I just thought, wow, those pieces are, clearly of a piece, like of the same kind of material, obviously very different. I mean, you have one is a German from 1750 and one is a Russian from 1950, one completely supported and patronized by the state, and the other persecuted and terrorized by the state. So lots of differences, of course, but there is a unique quality that they share, which is um, this linear approach to music. So it's very horizontal. It's always progressing either to or from cadence or climax. And, just the idea grabbed me. And then we were off to the races.
It feels like this project really fills a niche of its own. I mean, even if the listeners are familiar with the works independently, how do you feel like the art of Prelude and Fugue sheds a new light on the repertoire?
It's a little bit of a play on Bach's title, The Art of Fugue, which was a compendium of like everything you can do with a fugue. So I very consciously chose that, the art of Prelude and Fugue. This is kind of everything that's possible in this format. I guess it does fit a bit of a niche in a way, but it also does something that I don't really think recordings are supposed to do, which is, I mean, normally a recording is something that a group of works that an artist feels really passionately about and personally invested in, and like they have really something exciting to say about the pieces. But then they're generally presented archivally, in order. And I have not done that. I've taken these two giant masterpieces, not only put them side by side, but actually mingled them. So when I first started out with the idea, I had no idea that I was going to separate Bach preludes from their fugues, because that seemed like heresy, frankly. But what I learned when I started researching was that he was very practical about needing a G minor fugue and saying, oh, well, this one from a decade ago, I'll use this one. Or maybe I'll even transpose one because I need one to fulfill the key requirements of where I am in my cycle. So once I learned that, I felt a lot more comfortable parting a Bach prelude and fugue so that I could get, for example, a Shostakovich prelude next to a Bach prelude, or the fugues next to each other. The only way to do that was to separate one. And the Shostakovich are written attacca, so you may not part those.
What kind of elements informed your decision as to how to pair the Shostakovich in Bach? Was it purely key related, or were there other motives or materials that kind of led you toward that curating decision?
Yeah, that's a great question. It became an interesting hunt as I studied the Shostakovich and I already knew much of the Bach. Which one do I feel like I'm being reminded of, or which one do I feel like he might have been thinking of? And you've nailed 2 out of the 3. So a lot of it is motivic. So for example, the Shostakovich C minor prelude and fugue both use the same motive that is very, very close to Bach C sharp minor fugue. So I do have a piano here, so I can do this for you. So the Bach fugue is this. And the Shostakovich is. So if I did it in the same key, it would have been easier to hear the difference. So if you transpose one into the other. sometimes the similarities of motive are even more clear. So yeah, motive was a highly motivating factor, but also sometimes key. And interestingly, sometimes it was motive and key at the same time, like the B flat prelude of Bach. So the motive and the key being the factors that brought those pieces together.
What was your approach to some of the, I guess, artistic decisions that you had to make? Because I understand Bach didn't necessarily give a lot of instruction when it came to the score, so there's some flexibility in the interpretation. What was your approach to the tempo and other elements like that?
That's one of the very unique things about playing Bach, and I think what makes it so personal from artist to artist is exactly what you said. He gives almost no instruction. I mean, in a way, the music is so perfectly constructed that it needs no further indication in a way. You know, I've heard it said that you can play Bach on a kazoo and it still sounds profound. So yeah, he'll go, you know, no tempo indications very, very occasionally, like in the C minor prelude from book 1, there are some tempo markings, and very occasionally a staccato dot at the end of, I think it's book 2 in the B major fugue. But yeah, that leaves all the interpretive decision making up to the artist. And it's both wonderfully freeing, but also a little paralyzing because, I mean, imagine if you're building your own house and you get to choose everything, you know, should it be 3 steps up to the front door or should it be 4? I don't know. You know, it's a lot when you're in charge of all that. And of course, you know, musicians tend to view ourselves as very much keepers of tradition and in service to the desires of the composer. And when we aren't sure what those are, it can be a little bit paralyzing. But interestingly, Shostakovich has that quality as well. So it's another thing that makes them alike. Now, he does give a lot more direct instruction. I mean, he'll actually give metronome markings, some of which are crazy town. And he will give dynamics, but he'll still go for pages and pages, and it just says pianissimo. And so it's up to you, you know, like, where are the peaks? Where are the rises? It's all based on the harmonies and the way they kind of shift and unfold over time. So yeah, lots of that may be why the project has been so riveting for me, is that there's so much interpretation involved.
I'm so impressed that you worked your way through that kind of paralysis by analysis. And here's a question I ask on not only for me, but I think a lot of musicians who occasionally struggle finding the motivation to really see a project through like that from beginning to end. Because let's face it, as wonderful and fulfilling as music is, it's a lot of hard work too. And was there any point in that 8 years that you're working on it that you kind of stalled out or felt like you needed to reinvigorate?
Yeah. I would say that at the beginning in 2017, I had no idea I was going to record it. So I think the thing, rather than stalling out at some point and needing reinvigorating, I think the thing became more and more clear to me. This is the most important thing I've ever done artistically. And this is changing me and challenging me and rewarding me in ways I didn't anticipate. And so it was totally the opposite. So first it was just, oh, I'm going to give 4 concerts. It's 8 hours of music with intermissions. I'm going to do this at Peabody in the 2018-19 season. So it was just my goal to learn all that music and have it, you know, present it to the public. And it wasn't until the pandemic that I decided I should record this. And so that kind of gave some shape to my pandemic in a way.
In addition to these 4 concerts of recordings, you have some really wonderful listening notes for audience members. Did you pen those notes yourself?
Oh, yes. I actually wrote those because my partner, who I met at the same time, like within weeks, I met my partner and had the idea for the project. And he is not a musician. His name is David. And I was playing nothing but Bach and Shostakovich in preparation for these Peabody recitals. I'd go to, concert series and I'd play like a little segment or, it was an obsession. And I would go to him after and be like, oh, didn't you love the D minor? And he was like, I got lost, because I put my hands up and I don't take them down. And it is easy to get lost. Like, is this Bach? Is this Shostakovich? And so I wrote him like a little guide to help him keep his place. And after he experienced one of the concerts with the listening guide, he was like, Lou, you need to publish this because it's such a window into your curative mind. And not only is it interesting and, it kind of reads like a wine list, it's informally written. It's not like, literature. It's sometimes written in sentence fragments. And I sometimes say things like, this is Bach at his beer hall best, or, this is frivolity with rocketing sixths. And, and I mean, just depending on the mood, because the moods range so widely. So does the listening guide. So yeah, I became almost as attached to the listening guide as I am to the recording itself. I just think it is so enriching and wonderful. And I want people to know that they can download it for free. I'm offering it as a free PDF. I am also selling it as a beautiful print booklet for those who want to have it in their hands. It's 33 pages long. So it too is kind of gigantic. But it is such a wonderful tool for accessing the project at a deeper level, rather than just, oh, it's on Spotify playing in the background while you're cooking dinner. If you want to sit down and go deep, you want the listening guide.
This is going to be such a keepsake for our listeners here in Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan, which is all the more special knowing you yourself have some musical roots in Ohio. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm proud Ohio native. I lived there from 0 to 18. And my mother still lives in Oberlin. I still go back and stay in the same bedroom that I grew up in when I go to visit her.
On a final note, listeners have commented on how beautiful it is not only to hear you perform, but also to see you perform, almost like watching a ballet. What are some of the tenets of your philosophy of movement at the keyboard?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people do almost always say something about the visual experience. And at some point, I decided to name my technique because people would say, oh, it looks like your arms are flying through the air. So I call it volanti, which is Italian for flying. And it is, it's a very personal technique that comes from my particular constellation of training. I think we tend to have 4 or 5 major teachers in our lives as artists, and we tend to sort of distill certain things from each one, and then there's the inevitable process of like making sense of it all and making it make sense in the body that I live in, which I'm a smaller person. My hands aren't giant and I'm not big and powerful with long arms. And so I've learned that using my body as a kind of like a whole instrument is the way that I get all the sounds that I want. And I do like people to know that I'm not trying to put on a show for them. I'm not trying to look like Long or something. It's all in the service of finding sound and freedom, which has just unlocked me musically when I came upon that constellation of movements. And yeah, it's my pleasure to share that with my students because almost all of them have benefited. Some of them are like big giant guys with big hands, and I'm like, I don't know, you figure it out, right? Like that's not my body. So in a way, it's harder for me to help somebody like that. But for people who are, kind of normal sized, they find a lot of help and facility and agility in learning to use their arms more as they play.
Well, congratulations on an amazing release. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention, acknowledgments or final thoughts?
I guess I would just say to be in touch with me about like getting the listening guide, for example, or for those audio files out there who want a lossless experience, whenever you're streaming from a platform to a device and then to a Bluetooth speaker, you're going to lose a little bit of quality each time if you are disturbed by that. The whole project is available on a flash drive. which is also available just through me. So you pretty much need to know just how to spell Lura. I'm very Googleable, but my website is lurajohnson.com. And I would love for you to have that high audio experience. And there's also like interviews and trailers on there. And also I put copies of my own score so that you can see like, oh, what fingering does she use there? Or, you know, some little bonus features to round it all out.
This has been a conversation with pianist Lura Johnson, and that's Lura, L-U-R-A, so you can research. And the Art of Prelude and Fugue, presenting music of Johann Sebastian Bach and Dmitri Shostakovich. For a deep dive into that, be sure to check out the listening guide. And thank you so much, Lura, for your conversation today.
Thank you.